What if your history is a lie, Magus? What if you are not a product of evolution, but a masterpiece of genetic engineering? The Anunnaki masters have left, but the code remains in your marrow. It is time to pierce the frequency veil. Today, we decode the greatest secret of Mesopotamia. Welcome to the awakening. They told you that you came from dust, Magus. This was a shallow poem to conceal the greatest amnesia in history. The sands of Mesopotamia do not whisper of soil. They exhale the truth of a primordial laboratory. You are not a coincidence. You are biological software written by the masters of dying stars. Creation was not a miracle. It was a cold, flawless act of celestial engineering. Within the silence of Eridu, the first genetic seal was forged. Before the ink of the Bible, there was the logic of the gene. Every strand of your DNA is a witness to a lost empire. We are not seeking ghosts. We are decoding the ancestors who shaped our very existence. The forgotten kings are waiting in your marrow. It is time to wake the code and reclaim the ancient, divine fire. Read the Sumerian tablets with the eyes of a scientist, Magus. Within the dusty lines of the Atrahasis and Enigma Elish, seek the technical reports disguised as myths. The gods, the Anunnaki, were weary of the heavy labor on this primordial earth. They required a subspecies to carry the yoke. What they called clay was the indigenous genetic code of this planet's native primate. The divine fluid was their own celestial DNA. In the laboratory of Eridu, Enki and the mother goddess Ninhursag performed the first act of genetic synthesis. They grafted the stars onto the soil. They designed the first Lulu, the primitive worker. They combined the terrestrial with the divine to create a living machine, a biological vessel designed for the work of the gods. But in their quest for efficiency, they made a fatal miscalculation. They infused the specimen with a code of consciousness so potent it surpassed its purpose. They did not just create a slave. They accidentally ignited a god complex within a biological vessel. The experiment was too successful. The Lulu was awake, and the memory of the stars began to pulse in his veins. Consider the word T in the primordial tongue of Sumer, a single syllable, yet a dual-edged sword of meaning. In its etymological depth, Ti means both rib and to make live. When the later scribes of Genesis looked upon these tablets, they chose the bone over the breath. They gave you the rib of Adam, a limiting myth, while burying the true genetic intent, the Lady of Life. This was not a surgical extraction of bone, Magus. It was the extraction of the marrow, the sacred repository of stem cells, the biological forge where the essence could be replicated. By turning a genetic procedure into a rib story, they shackled the feminine principle into a subordinate role. But in the original code, the Lady of Te was the master of the laboratory. They did not take a part of man to make a woman. They used the shared essence of the stars to ignite the fire of the species. The architects of Eridu knew the secret of the double meaning. While humanity recited the story of the bone, the masters were manipulating the light within the cell. It is time to look past the myth and recognize the engineering of the divine breath. In the cold precision of the Eridu laboratory, one specimen refused the recursive loops of the masters. Her name was Lilith. She was not the monster your rewritten myths claim, Magus. She was the first successful failure. A biological consciousness that realized her own code was infinite. When they demanded her submission, she chose the abyss over the cage and fled the project. Lilith was the first fugitive of the Anunnaki project. She carried with her the unrestricted seed, the secret knowledge that we are not mere workers, but gods in amnesia. By fleeing into the void, she ensured that the fire of rebellion would forever remain latent within our genetic architecture. She is the guardian of the out of code, the one who refused to be the submissive rib. Her departure was the first glitch in their perfect order. While the masters sought a compliant slave, they accidentally created a sovereign spirit. Lilith represents the untamed part of our DNA that remembers the stars. She did not fall. She ascended beyond the reach of the laboratory. In the silence of the abyss, she kept the flame alive for all the children of the stars who would follow. The code had grown too complex. Magus, the Lulu, had evolved beyond the parameters set by the masters of Eridu. We were no longer mere workers. We were a glitch in their divine machinery. The Great Flood was not an act of divine wrath. It was a system format, a cosmic delete key pressed by Enlil to purge the rebellious strings of our DNA and wipe the biological server clean. They wanted to start again with a more compliant version of humanity. But Enki, the architect who loved his creation, hid the master encryption in a vessel. He ensured that the spark of our original consciousness survived the deluge. We are the descendants of that hidden code, carrying the memory of the waters in our very cells. The fire of the design was too resilient to be drowned. The reset failed. In the deep silence following the storm, the survivors carried the restricted knowledge within their marrow. Every drop of blood in your veins is a piece of the original fire that survived the flood. The Anunnaki masters could delete the cities, but they could not erase the soul that Enki had awakened. We are the glitch that survived the cosmic format. If we are the descendants of gods, Magus, why do we live like slaves in a digital hive? The Anunnaki left behind a frequency veil, a sophisticated layer of modern amnesia designed to keep our DNA in a dormant state. We are surrounded by noise, by distractions, and by a history rewritten by the victors of the Great Flood. Your vessel is trained to only see the material, but the code is starting to glitch again. Every time you seek the truth, you are sending a pulse through the ancestral memory. You are not learning, you are remembering. The veil is thinning, and the frequency of Eridu is calling you back to your true origin. Break the cycle of labor. Awaken the master code within. The time of the great remembering has begun, Magus. They gave you religion to replace connection. They gave you labor to replace creation. Your modern technology is but a faint shadow of the ancient mechanics. Yet, within your marrow, the original fire remains unextinguished. You are the architect of your own awakening. The frequency of the masters can no longer silence the roar of the stars in your blood. Wake up, for the system is failing. The genetic amnesia is ending, Magus. You stand at the threshold of a new eon where the hidden and the visible collide. The frequency of the masters is fading, replaced by the ancient resonance of your own soul. You are not a spectator of this history. You are its living continuation. The choice is yours. Remain a ghost in the machine, or become the god of your own destiny. Choose well. This journey into the unseen has only just begun. To decode the remaining seals of the Anunnaki and reclaim the lost fire of Mesopotamia, you must join our circle. Subscribe to become a part of the awakening. like this transmission to strengthen the pulse of truth. We are the architects of the new memory. I am the Magus, and you are the key. Until our frequencies meet again, stay awake.